we're very committed to the fact that we have a plan to rebuild Gaza, but we will not allow Gaza to be rebuilt until the demilitarization occurs. Nobody wants to put more money into a place that's gone on for so long until if it's just going to be taken over by terrorists or blown up again. We're also not going to restrict Israel's right to defend itself if there are any imminent threats, and so we had to clarify what that means. And then we went through the mechanism as well for what we need to do in terms of how to actually take the weapons.
So that's Jared Kushner. I'm going to tell you about his personal relationship with Netanyahu in a second. If you don't know it, it'll shock you. And he went with and talked to Netanyahu for 4 hours, and they decided that Israel should keep bombing Gaza. That is so surprising. So I will rage in a little bit also about some of the lies that Kushner told there. But first, let's find out the whole story from Anna Kasparian.
So obviously the outcome of that meeting with a longtime family friend of the Kushners, Benjamin Netanyahu, has led to the outcome that you just referenced, Cenk, that the Israelis are free to continue slaughtering innocent people in Gaza. Wow, what a shocker. Now, according to the Israeli paper Haaretz, the meeting ended with an agreement that Israel will continue targeted strikes in Gaza, which have mostly killed civilians, and I'm gonna prove that to you in just a moment with the data. Now, these deaths have occurred after the so-called ceasefire that was agreed upon in October of 2025. Israel's attacks in Gaza, since the so-called ceasefire deal was signed in October of 2025, have killed at least 1,265 Palestinians and wounded 4,198, and that's according to the latest numbers released by Gaza's health ministry. But in June, the United Nations actually released a report where they reported specifically on confirmed deaths of Palestinians, confirmed killings of Palestinians. They were able to confirm the deceased by name. And then they did an analysis on how these individuals were killed, whether or not they're actually, Hamas militants. And I want to give you the results of their findings. Now, this was published in regard to the data that they were able to confirm between October of 2025 and April of 2025. Obviously, more Palestinians have been slaughtered by the Israelis since then, but right now we're just focusing on the months between October 2025 and through April of 2026, okay? So as you can see, 43% of those killed by the Israelis in Gaza, 43% children and women. Children and women. And by the way, they were able at that time to confirm the fatalities of 629 people in Gaza, okay? 284 of them, since the ceasefire was announced, were killed in their homes, tents, or shelters. Israelis keep bombing literal tents in refugee camps like the one in Al-Mawasi and Nuseirat. I know some people like to refer to this as a pretendicide, as if they're super clever about all of this destruction and slaughter Americans are forced to pay for. But I don't think that's so cute. Let me continue. 196 were killed simply for being near the yellow line. So they're not Hamas militants, they're civilians, but they made the mistake of getting close to the area in which the Israelis are already occupying land that they intend to steal for themselves. And so those Palestinians were slaughtered. This is, again, according to a UN report. This is the reason why the Israelis don't like the UN, because every once in a while the UN actually says the truth out loud. Let's take a look at the other graphic. By the way, I should note that today UNICEF put out a report that found that at least 300 children have been killed since Gaza's ceasefire was announced. Now, going back to the UN's reporting, in some incidents, only children or only women and children were killed. So in 48 of the attacks that Israel carried out against Gaza since the so-called ceasefire was signed in October, 48 of those attacks killed children, okay, only children. And in 21 of those attacks, women were killed in incidents in which only women and children were killed. Okay, so this is the reality of who the Israelis are. They tell us every single day, they tell us who they are. And when we just simply acknowledge the bloodthirsty genociders for who they are, you get called all sorts of names. Well, they tell us, they say it out loud. So what do you want us to do? Pretend like we don't hear it? Pretend like we don't believe it? Their words are loud about it, and their actions prove that they mean what they say. They are genocidal scum. who love killing women and children and innocent civilians in their quest to expand borders and steal land. That is what they are. That is what we as American citizens are forced to fund thanks to our disgusting duopoly where both parties are totally controlled by the Israel lobby and that sweet, sweet money.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation.
So we're going to continue to improve our case as we go forward here. We're going to get back to Jared Kushner's lies in a second. But to back up what Anna's saying, what's interesting is that if you deny the Holocaust or the Armenian genocide, you're called a genocide denier or Holocaust denier. That makes sense.
Right.
And that's outrageous and terrible thing to do. But if you acknowledge the genocide in Gaza, the press then turns around and goes, no, you have to deny the genocide. You're a bad person if you don't deny the genocide. Then being a genocide denier is great because it helps Israel.
Well, history will not look favorably upon the scum that engage in that. Just know that. To all of the people who utter words like pretendicide, just know history will look back on you and not in a favorable way.
Yeah. So I have a lot more where that came from. So I want to go to Itamar Ben-Gvir's quote, and he said this the other day. We showed it to you yesterday, but it bears repeating in this context. He said, "I think targeted assassinations should be carried out in Gaza, taking down 30 to 40 every night. Not just those who pose an immediate threat. There are people there who are not worthy of life."
Oh, a pretendicide, right? That's what this is, a pretendicide?
They shouldn't live. They're not even people. So that sounds directly like a Nazi quote. Now let's go to Goebbels, and that's American media, because Anna just read you the stat: 1,265 Palestinians have been killed since the ceasefire. And is American press jumping up and down, going, "I can't believe Israel violated yet another ceasefire, and they will not stop violating it. Oh my God, they've killed more people since the ceasefire than October 7th. You know, Noble Mobile is one of our top sponsors. We love those guys. They save you a ton of money. So they've got a new proposal for you guys. It's gonna save you even more. So you know you can't pay more than $50 ever. You know you get money back for if you don't use your data. So it's already an incredible deal. TYT.com/switch. Now they're saying your first month is going to be only $10. So that's depending on how much data you use, savings of $20 to $40, right? You could download the app to track your brain rot index. That's how much you can save each month using your phone less and spending more time doing things that actually make you happy. So just a ton of wins in here, and the cell phone service for me has been perfect. I didn't have to change my phone or anything else on the phone. So please don't waste money. So if you're paying over $50, definitely. I think if you're paying over $30, switch now and you get the first month for $10. So TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. Because I was told October 7th was the worst thing that ever happened since the Holocaust. But when an October 7th happens in Gaza since the ceasefire, our press all of a sudden says, we don't care at all. At all. Those are just Palestinian lives. They're not super precious Israeli lives. And by the way, as you're gonna see in the Kushner thing, he makes it sound like the Palestinians are the bad guys and the Israelis are the good guys while pretending to be a neutral arbiter. But in reality, the Israelis have done 70 October 7ths before the ceasefire, one after the ceasefire, and another one in the West Bank. And the entire time, our press has been telling you it's self-defense. Why are we even talking about October 7th? That was 3 years ago. What's happening in the Gaza and West Bank that had nothing to do with Hamas have nothing to do with October 7th.
Yeah.
It's just a slaughter fest of a bunch of fascists who tell you we don't think Palestinian lives are worth anything. And our press pretends they're the good guys. So what does that make them?
Genocidal scum.
It makes them the PR agents of a genocide.
100%.
So there's no question about this. So back to Jared.
Okay, so back to Jared. Others involved in this meeting and discussion with Netanyahu were, the neocons' greatest hits, like former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Okay, and earlier that same day, Kushner actually met with Hamas officials who, in my opinion, were calling Kushner's bluff, because in that meeting they said that they were in fact committed to disarming under the plan that was announced by Donald Trump, right? This is the whole Board of Peace plan. They're like, we will definitely disarm. However, there is a caveat. And here's what the caveat is. Take a look.
Hamas has publicly tied an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza to any sort of disarmament. Were you able to clarify some of those positions in your meetings over the past 48 hours?
Yeah, so Israel now is at the yellow line, which we agreed to in the negotiations for the initial deal in the 20-point plan. Right now, we have to show that Hamas is serious. There's been many, many violations, by them of the agreement. And then once we get them into full compliance with the agreement, and we're able to get the demilitarization done, then we'll discuss the Israeli withdrawal. But the goal ultimately is for Israel to withdraw from Gaza, but only when Hamas is really demilitarized and there's a whole governance in place there that hopefully can work on helping the people grow. And we don't want Gaza to ever be a threat to Israel again.
You met with Hamas officials yesterday. Do you think they're genuine about peace?
I mean, they said all the right things, but obviously it's very, very hard to trust, a terrorist organization that committed these terrible atrocities.
The Knesset, that terrorist organization, is that what he's referring to? No, he's referring to Hamas, which is hilarious because there is one group of people who have reneged on every ceasefire, who have been a major obstacle to peace, who have attacked all of their neighbors, who are currently provoking for a war against Turkey right now as we speak. Okay, it's amazing to me that the people carrying out genocide right now, wiping out villages in southern Lebanon, wiping out homes and running people out of their legal homes in the West Bank, those people are not considered terrorists, according to Jared Kushner. Those people are totally worthy of trust. But when it comes to Hamas, I mean, honestly, you want to talk about terrorism. What Hamas did on October 7th pales in comparison to the ongoing terrorism that's been carried out by the Israelis, not just over the last few years, but for decades now, for decades.
Yeah, they make it sound like our press does that everything started on October 7th. They're like, oh yeah, 59 years of brutal occupation and oppression by the Israelis, not important, not relevant. Not relevant. The Palestinians, the monstrous terrorists, just attacked out of nowhere because they hate Jews so much. What a bunch of liars, bunch of Goebbels working for Israel, pretending to be American press. Let me continue with clear facts about this. So he said, oh my God, Hamas has done many violations of the ceasefire. That's just literally not true. Israel has done endless violations of the ceasefire. They violated first, they violated way more than Hamas has. In fact, what violations are they talking about? So meanwhile, I mean, do you see another 1,000 people killed in Israel? No, you see 0 people killed in Israel since the ceasefire. And how many do you see Palestinians that have been killed? 1,265. And yet our press just lets Jared Kushner and every Trump person, and honestly every Democrat, lie about it 24/7 because our press doesn't work for America and they don't care about the truth. Look, I used to like Trey Yingst, and he asked some good questions here that made some news. But I mean, even his framing is preposterous. He didn't question a single lie of Jared Kushner, and almost everything Kushner said was a lie. Not one was challenged. And then he frames it as, well, can Hamas be trusted? Israel's the one that violates every ceasefire. Israel's the one that's done 72 October 7s. But never does it occur to Trey Yingst, oh, can I ask, can Israel be trusted to hold a ceasefire and comply? And now the biggest lie of all in this context. So Hamas and Trump made a deal where Hamas would disarm, then Israel would withdraw, then Hamas would disarm more and Israel would withdraw more. And that is a logical way to go, step by step. Each side proves that it's doing the right thing. It's not Israel withdraws and just trusts Hamas and then Hamas gives it their weapons in at a later time. No, it's graduated. It makes perfect sense. And I said, hey, nice job by Trump on that peace deal, right? So now Kushner is 100% lying and saying now the deal is Hamas has to give up all of their arms before Israel does a single thing. That's not the American position. That is not the position of the peace plan. That is Israel's position. So Jared Kushner is now saying the American position, I just threw it in the garbage. It doesn't exist anymore. I went and talked to my godfather, almost literally, and he told me that I am to have the Israeli position and don't care about what the Americans think. American voters don't like Israel anymore. They don't want any of these wars. They don't want to fund the genocide. He doesn't care. He works for Israel. Stop pretending he's an American. And look at this. He's supposed to be an arbiter, neutral, and he's like, Hamas are the terrorists. The Palestinians are the terrorists. The Israelis are the ones that have to defend themselves, and we have to give everything to Israel. Now, the amazing fact about their personal relationship. Every time Benjamin Netanyahu went to America for a very long stretch of time, he would stay with The Kushners.
Neutral arbiter.
In fact,
Yeah.
the room he stayed in was Jared Kushner's room. So Jared Kushner's like a godson to him. It couldn't be any closer. Meanwhile, our press is pretending that Jared Kushner's neutral or an American. No, he 100% represents Israel's interest. By the way, we're asking you guys online, who does he represent, Israel or America? I mean, I'm curious how it's gonna be, tyt.com, go vote there. Yesterday, we asked you guys about Israel and who's prolonging this war, who's responsible for prolonging the war. 74% of you said US and Israel, only 2% of you said Iran, and there's 48,000 votes now, I think, or 43,000 votes. I think the correct answer is the last one. We're only in it for Israel, so they're completely irresponsible. And that came in higher than all three of them or Iran.
So as Israel targets, they just bombed Syria, right? And so there are reports that the Israelis bombed, Turkish military assets that were being sent to Syria in an effort to provoke war with Turkey, which they've been previewing. The Israeli officials have been previewing that for us. So when they tell us what they intend to do, and then they actually carry it out historically over and over again, we should believe them. So here's my question to you, Cenk. I mean, look, I don't know as much about Turkey's military as I do in regard to like the military capabilities that Iran has. However, I've been led to believe that Turkey has a formidable military. Okay, yeah. We are running out of missile interceptors. We have depleted our own military assets. So in a situation in which our bases in the Gulf have been destroyed by Iran in this war, in a situation in which we have limited military capability to respond to attacks toward Israel, if Turkey gets involved in a war against Israel, what happens to Israel? And like, what is this? Are they setting the stage to use nukes? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I'm definitely worried about it. So I'll tell you what I know and what I don't know. I know that if Israel bombs Turkey, that everyone in American media will lie and say that it was self-defense and that Turkey had it coming and it's all the Turks' fault and all Muslims are terrorists, because our media is a bunch of bigoted liars who work for Israel. So you can say, hey, Cenk, that's outrageous. That's totally wrong. Let's see what happens. I guarantee you they blame Turkey. And they'll talk about, oh, it's a NATO ally, but then they'll dismiss it. Yeah, but they're dirty Muslims. So Israel had to murder them. Israel has to murder everyone. It's always self-defense. By the way, the Germans also said that it was self-defense. They were the victims of World War I. That's why they had to attack all their neighbors in self-defense.
Okay, but who cares what the media says? It's not going to change the facts on the ground.
Okay, so no, that's the reason why that's relevant is then America will say, oh, even though we have an Article 5 obligation to defend a NATO country, Turkey, we won't. We'll betray them. We'll betray all of our oaths, and instead we'll help Israel, right? So those are guaranteed. Those are baked in. Okay, I don't know what America's going to do, but they're at this point, Trump is 100% owned by the Israelis. It's the most obvious thing in the world. If you're denying it, you're denying reality, and you look like an idiot. You look like such a stupid fool doing Israeli propaganda. Oh no, this war was in our interest, even though it's destroying his his term. He's at the lowest approval rating he's ever been in. The economy is in tatters, but he's voluntarily doing it for American interest, for Trump's interest? No, he's doing it for Israeli interest, you morons. And stop pretending that you're Americans when all you do is propaganda for Israel. Okay, so then I don't know with any degree of detail Turkish politics or the Turkish military readiness, okay? But I do know this, here's what I care about. America has to get the hell out of the Israel business. They can't, like everyone in our disgusting Goebbels-like media says, you have to defend Israel, no matter how many wars they start. It's your job to defend Israel. No, it's not. Israel's a pipsqueak country that has nothing to do with us. And in fact, they're a giant troublemaker. They're the ones starting all the wars. They're the ones who did a genocide. We owe them nothing. Get America out of Israel, out of the Middle East. By the way, if we stopped our alliance with Israel today, we would literally have no wars in the Middle East. And we would have no wars in the Middle East as far as the eye could see.
Israel would probably try to nuke us.
The only reason we're constantly in war at the Middle East is because Israel has ordered us into those wars to wipe out their enemies and made a whole new set of enemies for America. And all of this was super obvious as the disgusting liars in our press pretended that it was for American interest. Oh, you have to go into Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction. Wink. Who gave us that intelligence? The Israelis did the same. We're reliving the same exact movie. Where they're pretending the Iranians have weapons of mass destruction. Who's had weapons of mass destruction the entire time in the Middle East? Only one country, Israel. But our lying, disgusting press, who works for Israel completely, didn't tell you that, did they? Instead, they hide. Oh, where did they get those nuclear weapons? Oh, they stole it from us. And our lying, disgusting press says, oh, that's perfectly normal. It's not normal. So what's gonna happen, Anna? If we can somehow extract Israel from our government and our media, and we absolutely, positively must, until we get out from underneath the yoke of Israeli oppression and occupation here in America, we will never be free. We'll be constantly at war, constantly doing Israel's interests, constantly wasting trillions of in fact, not our money. We have to borrow trillions from China that your kids and grandkids have to pay for the rest of their lives. So Israel can have more war and more conquest, while everybody in our disgusting media lies to you 24/7 and calls all of Israel's critics anti-Semites and tries to destroy them on behalf of Israel, who they clearly work for. So if we don't extract ourselves, we will then be in a war with a NATO ally and Iran, and God knows when Pakistan is gonna get involved. And right now, Ukraine is trying to drag Russia into that war. So here we go, World War III. Except this time we're on the German side, the fascist side,
that's true.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, if we extract ourselves, then what happens? My guess is that Turkey and Iran at that point, if this all comes to fruition and Israel gets its dreams come true, where they get to attack Turkey and Iran, that Turkey and Iran will start winning. And when they start winning, Israel will definitely use a nuke. Because Israel doesn't have any tolerance for pain. They're murderers of women and children. They don't want to fight a real war. That's why they make the sucker Americans fight all their wars. If America withdraws, Israel will press that button so quick, because the current leaders of Israel have no morality at all. They're some of the most evil people on the planet. I just read you their quotes about how they don't even consider their neighbors human. So they say we should slaughter the innocents. I read you the quote, there's no question about it. And that's not the one quote, that's one of dozens and dozens of quotes of different Israeli government officials saying they're not human, let's murder all of them. So will they use a nuke? They won't hesitate for a second to use a nuke. And then they'll say self-defense. Well, I had 13 Israelis who died and their lives are worth 13 million Muslims, they'll say. They will literally say it out loud. And our press will then come and go, the Muslims had it coming, they should all be murdered, it's okay that they use the nuke. The Democrats will pretend to complain, but vote yes, right? And then they'll say, well, now America has to get involved. America has to re-enter.
With what weapons? With what weapons? You guys have already sucked us dry. With what weapons? So you know what? If they finally get what they want, revel in it, enjoy. Okay, but you suck away all of our resources for decades upon decades upon decades, risk our national security, sacrifice our soldiers. When you finally get the war you want and you're being battered by it, enjoy. I know I will.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.